There's a fundamental rule in history. Every empire falls. It just happens. Rome fell and never came back. The Mongols vanished into the pages of history. The British Empire, it shrank back to a small island. But then there's China. China is different. It's like it just keeps coming back from the dead over and over again.
So what's the secret? How is it possible that this one civilization seems to have some kind of cosmic undo button for total collapse? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore. We're about to dive into an incredible 5,000-year-old pattern of breakdown and comeback to really get at the deep systems that hold China together and what that ancient cycle means for all of us today.
And let's be really clear about the scale we're talking about here. This isn't just a change of government. We are talking about at least 8 major catastrophic breakdowns. Total chaos, foreign invasions, mass starvation, entire dynasties completely wiped off the map. The kind of thing that, for any other civilization, would be a permanent, final game over.
So let's get into this core idea, the empire that never dies. Think about it like this. When the Western Roman Empire fell, that was it, curtains. But when China's first great empire, the Han Dynasty, collapsed into centuries of brutal warfare, you'd think that was the end, right? Nope. It was more like an intermission, because eventually China came back, reunified with the same language, the same culture, basically the same operating system. It was like someone just hit a giant reset button.
So how on earth did they do it time and time again? Well, historians have pointed to 3 core things that work together like a kind of civilizational immune system. These are the deep pillars that are so resilient, they manage to survive even when the government, the economy, and the military are all in ruins.
So what are these 3 pillars? First, a unified writing system that kept the idea of China alive. Second, a totally unique political philosophy called the Mandate of Heaven, which basically demanded reunification. And third, a permanent class of professional administrators who held on to the blueprints for running the state no matter who was in charge.
Let's look at language first, because this is huge. After Rome fell, its common language, Latin, shattered into pieces. It became French, Spanish, Italian, and those new languages helped create new separate countries. But in China, even when spoken dialects were completely different, everybody used the exact same written characters. This meant a general in one warring kingdom could read the poetry of his enemy hundreds of miles away. The written word acted like a cultural superglue, always preserving the story of what China was supposed to be.
Okay, pillar number 2. This is a brilliant political concept, the Mandate of Heaven. The idea seems simple, right? The emperor gets to rule because the heavens say so. But, and this is the genius part, there's a huge catch. If things start going badly, floods, famines, rebellions, that's seen as a sign that the emperor has lost the mandate. And what does that do? It makes rebellion legitimate. It basically gives people a cosmic permission slip to overthrow a bad dynasty.
So this ideology creates an incredibly powerful magnetic pull back towards a single unified China. Why? Because to truly claim you had the Mandate of Heaven, you couldn't just be the king of some little breakaway state. No, that just made you a warlord. The only way to be the real emperor was to unite all of China. So every single time it shattered, the ultimate goal for every ambitious leader was always the same: put the whole thing back together.
And that brings us to our 3rd pillar, the scholar bureaucrats. See, for more than 1,000 years, China was run by a class of professional administrators who got their jobs by passing these insanely difficult exams. When a dynasty collapsed, this expert class didn't just disappear. They were the keepers of the state's blueprints. They were, basically, a civilizational hard drive, ready to be plugged into whatever new dynasty managed to put the country back together.
So to really understand how special this system is, just flip the question. Why didn't Rome come back? What about the Mongol Empire? It was the largest land empire in history. Why did it just vanish?
While they were missing those key ingredients, Europe had no Mandate of Heaven demanding it get back together, and actually became comfortable being divided. The Mongol Empire was held together by personal loyalty to a great leader, not a permanent bureaucracy. It just fell apart. And here's the wild part. Even when foreign invaders like the Mongols or the Manchus conquered China, they ended up being absorbed by its culture. They became Chinese emperors, using the Chinese system to rule, and ended up preserving the various civilization they had conquered.
Okay, so let's bring this into the modern era. How does this ancient pattern apply now? Well, the 19th and 20th centuries were the ultimate stress test. This was the collapse that, by all rights, should have finally broken the cycle for good.
Just look at this timeline of pure catastrophe. The Opium Wars, the Taiping Rebellion, which killed more people than World War I, the complete collapse of the imperial system, the country breaking apart into warlord states, a brutal Japanese invasion, followed by a vicious civil war. By 1949, China was an absolute wreck. Everyone just assumed it was finished.
But that's not what happened. Instead, Mao Zedong and the Communist Party came along and they hit the reset button. The parallels are just stunning. Instead of studying Confucian classics to become a scholar official, you studied Marxist theory to become a party cager. And instead of the mandate of heaven, your legitimacy came from national rejuvenation, the promise to end foreign humiliation and make China strong again. Structurally, it's almost a perfect mirror of the old imperial system.
The cycle simply repeated with a new vocabulary. And it happened again after Mao's death. Deng Xiaoping's economic reforms in the 1980s were just another reset, pulling the country back from ideological chaos with a new promise of wealth and power. It's the same pattern, just playing out at warp speed.
So this all brings us to the biggest question of all. This pattern has held up for millennia, but can it possibly survive the completely unique pressures of the 21st century?
Because China is now facing challenges that have absolutely no historical precedent. A demographic crisis with a shrinking, aging population, a massive environmental crisis, deep entanglement in a global economy, the free flow of information on the internet, and a new generation with totally different expectations. All the previous resets happened when China was isolated and agrarian. That world is gone forever.
And here is the great paradox. The very things that made China so incredibly resilient for 5,000 years, that intense centralization and obsessive drive for unity, could now be its greatest weaknesses. Centralized control is super risky when one bad decision can instantly affect 1.4 billion people, and enforcing cultural unity is a lot harder in the age of the internet. The entire system was built for a world that no longer exists.
So why does any of this ancient history matter to us right now? Because understanding this ancient pattern is the single best key to understanding China's actions on the world stage today. And frankly, it's a mirror for any nation struggling with its own crises and its own survival.
You can see this pattern playing out right now, clear as day. The Belt and Road Initiative isn't just about economics. It's about restoring China to its historical place at the center of the world. The constant pressure on Taiwan, that's a direct expression of that ancient, non-negotiable drive for territorial unification. And the national goal of rejuvenation by 2049, that's just the modern version of claiming the mandate of heaven. It's the same historical script. When you boil it all down, the real lesson from China's long history is this. True resilience isn't about never falling. It's not about being unbreakable. It's about having the systems, the stories, and the shared memory that tell you how to get back up after a disaster. It's that institutional memory coded right into the culture that holds the instructions for the next comeback.
Which leaves us with one last huge question. Is this incredible 5,000-year pattern a kind of blueprint for survival in a chaotic world? Or is it a historical trap that China can't escape, one that's preventing it from adapting to a future where the old rules just don't apply anymore? The answer to that question will likely define our century.